are you doing today, you beautiful souls? I'm coming to you with another divinely led message. Um, we are definitely in the midst of a lot of timeline shifts, a lot of energy, um, a lot of things that are taking place for our greatest and highest good, but it may not feel like it, right? So you're feeling really fatigued, or you're feeling like you might be dizzy, you might be nauseous, you might be all of the above. Um, you may normally not have any trouble sleeping, and now you're having trouble sleeping, or vice versa, where you might have trouble falling asleep normally. And now you feel like you're just being magnetically pulled into your bed. And that is exactly where you want to stay for a while. Whatever it is that you're feeling, it's totally normal. I know that's like, but I don't feel good, Nicole. I don't want to feel this way. Well, I just want to put it in perspective. Okay. So never before in the history of sentient beings, of mankind, humans, been able to live on a planet that is ascending and also ascend successfully. So you might feel a little crappy here or there. And guess what? You're doing a great job. We are making history. We are making universal history. And you're here doing it because you're strong enough to do it. And you volunteered to do it. You volunteered to help your fellow brothers and sisters. And so it's not always rainbows and butterflies, right? I know, but it's totally worth it. Now, as we have learned, I have my the more I learn, the less I know t-shirt, because like the more we learn, sometimes what we learn is such a shock. And you're just sort of like, okay, I'm going to file that back in the deep recesses of my mind because I don't really need to think about that kind of stuff until you need to think about that kind of stuff. What I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and what's coming through in my downloads is that there needs to be a better understanding about soul contracts, because knowledge is power. I firmly believe that with all of my being. And you may not like what you learn. The truth may kind of suck, but it's truth, and you can respect the truth. We, as a people, we really need to be done with people lying to us because they think that they're doing us a favor. Because in the long run, that never works out well. Okay. So I'm going to be going in depth on some things about soul contracts that you may or may not know. You may have heard some of the terms, but you didn't know how they actually fit together. I've said many, many times that going through my own journey, I realized that a lot of the things that I thought had happened to me were actually happening for me, right? And at the time, that's all I knew. I had just come through the soul evolution to realize that some of the most darkest days, some of the hardest events for me to physically get through, to spiritually get through and not lose my marbles, I realized I had not just been maliciously treated. I had really contracted that for this lifetime. I needed that on a soul level. I needed to experience that, and all the people that I experienced it with. Okay, they all play a part. And at the time that I learned that I figured that out, I was just in that aha moment, because that in itself is a lot, right? And so for me personally, I dealt with my first husband dying tragically, and then several subsequent relationships that all ended very badly, and coming to terms with my cancer diagnosis times two, and like all these things. And so pretty much by the age of 45, I had experienced in 45 years what some people never experience. And so there was a time I thought I was cursed. And I was targeted and I was being attacked. And some of those things were true. However, the really big events in my life that felt like were happening to me were actually in my soul contract. I actually, with the karmic board, which I will explain, decide each soul's incarnation and what they're going to need for their soul evolution, for their checklist, for their growth, for their ultimate greatest good. Because the goal is balance in all things. When things get out of balance, mayhem ensues. We have learned that. Some of us haven't really learned that, but you should learn it quickly because that's exactly the point of so many aspects of life is to have balance. So the actual definition of a soul contract, I'm going to read it instead of just giving you my take on it. It's incarnation contract negotiated prior to a soul's incarnation or arrival to a new body. During the pre-incarnation meetings, significant events, including working with specific corresponding souls and defining all souls' roles, is negotiated with Source Creator and the Karmic Board. I'm going to touch on a couple of things in there. When I say prior to a soul's incarnation / arrival, a man and a woman have come together and made a child. They're pregnant. They have the baby. The human baby has all the things to be a human. That is matter. That is the avatar. That's the matter. It may or may not be born with a soul. Some souls need to have the birth experience and some souls don't. So a soul can contract to literally be in the fetal form and have the birth experience and live on earth, have an earthly incarnation up to like 5 or 6. And then that soul leaves and a walk-in comes into that body because their contract doesn't require that arrival through the birth canal and all of that infant stuff and the toddler years. Their soul needs from like age 7 on. I know how that sounds, but multiple people that are completely clear in their energy field and have a open channel communication to Source Creator has confirmed this information. And it's not just within my group. You can find it. This is known. And it makes sense, right? We're energy. We are energy beings. We have to evolve as a soul to become ascended. And it takes a lot of both negative polarity and positive polarity existences to meet that graduation mark. Okay. I'm feeling some source energy because I'm on point. This message really needed to come through. There's a lot of people that needs this information. I'll just leave it at that. So the other thing I will say is a body sometimes is aware that a walk-in has arrived and sometimes they're not. It just depends on the energy and it depends on the abilities and it depends on what they're allowed to know. So a kind of a clue that this has happened, it sometimes happens in a crisis event. It also sometimes just happens because it's a soul contract. But what you'll see is that person, that matter, the person that you know, like Melissa, just random name. She seemed like a completely different person. And then all of a sudden she had these, like she ate different food and she wanted to do different things. And like her personality was really, really different. But she knew all of her history and everything beforehand. Well, you do have characteristic changes whenever you have another soul come in. Your soul really is an integral part of who you are as a character being, but your matter, your body is not an integral part of who you are as a soul. I know. Okay, so the role is negotiated with source creator, you may call him God, and the karmic board. So what is the karmic board? I personally first heard about the karmic board when I was using, and I still use, divine light meditation, because we call in our karmic board for our meditation, because they're weighing your balance of information and experiences. So the karmic board consists of 8 ascended masters who are assigned the responsibility to dispense justice to the system of worlds, adjudicating karma, mercy, judgment on behalf of the life stream. Every life stream. And it's called life stream because it's sentient beings, right? It's lives. It's not necessarily a earthly human body. It could also be a soul can contract to be in a snake or a horse or a spider or a crystal. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like there are many other life streams other than what we know in this 3D matrix. That's the whole purpose of what I do, why I do what I do, because there is so much we don't know. And the confusion comes because we don't know what we don't know. And so knowledge is power. So the karmic board members are, number 1, the great divine director. Who is the great divine director? The great divine director achieved ascension before the fall of man. He was one of the teachers for Lord Maitreya, the Mahachohan, Saint Germain, one of my favorites. He also assisted with Lady Nada with her ascension over 2,700 years ago. And he is known as the Manu of the 7th root race. Then you have the second person of the 8 ascendant masters is the goddess of freedom, Libertas. They say that is supposed to be who the Statue of Liberty was made in the likeness of. I don't know. Ascendant Master Lady Nada, which I just mentioned, so she's ascended over 2,700 years ago. The Elohim Cyclopia, that's the all-seeing eye for Source Creator. Athena Pallas, which is the goddess of truth. Lady Portia, the goddess of justice. Kuan Yin, my girl, the goddess of mercy and compassion. And Buddha Vairocana, one of the 5 Dhyana Buddhas. That consists of the 8 ascendant masters on the karmic board. They serve as intermediaries between people, us, and their karma. All souls must pass before the karmic board before and after each carnation on earth. Now, I've spoke about this several times where I say, things are part of your soul contract, or things are part of their soul contract. And once your earthly form, your matter dies, wears out, whatever, then that energy body that you are continues on, and you kind of have your come to Jesus talk. Well, that's your meeting with the karmic board when you decide, did you achieve your goals? Did you meet your soul contract agreement, and what is next for you? They receive their assignment and their karmic allotment for each lifetime beforehand and review their performance at its conclusion. So they basically say, because again, we have free will choice. So anyone with a soul contract can free will choice their way right out of it. So your higher self, your light being, your soul, sits down with the karmic board and they balance out what you need for the upcoming incarnation. And so it's very well thought out, and all of your previous incarnations are considered, and what you still need are considered. So there's an agreement. And then we're arrived with amnesia. And we go through our life trying to figure out why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing and weighing the pros and the cons against every free will choice that we make. And of those free will choices, are we course correcting in alignment to source, which would keep us more in alignment with our soul contract usually, or away from source? And so those free will choices can sometimes just eject you from your soul contract, like abort mission. So some people talk about a soul contract like they have no choice. They really do have a choice, but I don't recommend saying, you know, hey, white flag, raise a white flag, come get me, because this, I just can't do this. Because like with all of our lessons, you're going to have to do it again. You might get a moment of respite as a soul. You might send you to whatever to get yourself together, but you're going to have to incarnate again to complete this portion that you still need. And you've heard us say this many, many times, like time, why I put this portal picture behind us, time only exists for us. The rest of the cosmos, universe, everything is energy and events. So there's seasons and there's events that take place, and that's how people have timeline events. But it's not supposed to be like a 12-month calendar. Like that was literally invented for us. So when we are going through our life and, you know, I never remember thinking as a kid, you know, I wonder if, like, if I did something wrong, you know, I wonder who's keeping track of all this stuff. Like, I've been on a tear. Like, I remember one year, I was really challenging and I didn't get anything for Christmas. And I was like, well, somebody's keeping track, you know, so I remember thinking that. So there are indeed recording angels. The Lords of Karma have access to the complete records of the recording angels who record every life stream's earthly incarnation. And this was hinted to in Marvel's series Loki, because he ends up in basically a timeline battle. And people kind of arrive there in that depiction in the afterlife. And they have this big stack of papers, and it, like, every word you've ever said to anyone anywhere, or every thought you've ever had, prints out. And so as the people, the characters, as they're sitting there saying, like, what the hell is this? Another page prints goes on top. It's kind of a funny representation, but there are recording angels, just so you know. So they determine, the karmic board, not the recording angels. The karmic board determines who shall embody, that means who gets a body, when and where. They assign souls to families and communities, measuring out the weights of karma to be balanced. So we don't always have rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes we have a really good run, and we've had a few incarnations where we've done really great things. And that means that we're really out of balance, that we have a lot of positive polarity and not enough negative polarity to keep us in balance. So that means that the karmic board will look and say, well, you've got all this positive karma built up. Now you need to balance it with some negative karma. So then you have a negative polarity existence, because we can't fully evolve as a soul until we have checked all the boxes. So it's just like you appreciate the light because you were in darkness. People that fully ascend have had negative polarity lives where they learned lessons of a negative energy being. and positive polarity lives. Okay. And one of the things that has really, really, really come through for me big lately is to stay in an absent state of judgment. It is something I really struggled with earlier in my life before I got on this journey. I was very judgmental and felt entitled to do so. And I have souls now coming back around in my path, in my timeline, that source creator has forgiven, and they have grown, they have evolved on their own, just like I have. And who am I to have judgment on who they used to be? No one. I don't have the right to have judgment, period. I have the right to have discernment for my decisions, but not in a place of judgment. So one of my guides is my grandfather on my mom's side. And I knew him up until I was 8 when he passed away. And he died of alcoholism. He asphyxiated. And I only ever knew him in the context of being asleep because he was sleeping it off or on a bender, right? So I didn't have a real great context of who he was as in that incarnation. But he chose to be a guide for me once he crossed over. And that was his contract for that incarnation, was to be exactly who and what he was, which in my life wasn't a positive individual, right? And I was not aware of a lot of the things that he did because it happened before I was arrived. But there's a lot of things that I know that he did in that incarnation that you would not classify as good. That being said, that was his contract. He honored his contract. He did what he was supposed to do. His soul evolved and ascended because he learned all the lessons that he needed to learn. When I realized that he was a guide, I initially thought, great. And I caught myself because I was having a moment of judgment based on that incarnation. That was what my mind knew of him. That does not define who his soul is. That does not define his limitations or lack thereof, and his abilities and all of the things that he has accomplished in other incarnations. Like, I have absolutely no basis to have any judgment on who he is as an evolved soul. I am now just in a moment and a place of gratitude that he chose to be a guide for me. And I don't have many familial or friend guides, and I'm very thankful for him. But that was an aha moment for me because I caught myself wanting to be in a place of judgment based on his incarnation. And that's not who we are on a soul level. That's just who we decided with the karmic board that we needed to be for that moment for our soul to evolve, to get through to the next phase of ascending. I hope that makes sense. So let's see, with the timeline jumping, man, I went through a big timeline jump last night. Everybody in my crew did. And it's just the energies and in the intentions of converging that 3D timeline into that 5D timeline, which is where we're headed. And it felt super heavy. It felt like, yeah, you can be alive while we go through this transition, but you need to be asleep because it's going to make you sick otherwise. And so a lot of us were just like so tired. We were in bed super, super early. And that's because we were going through a lot of upgrades and timeline jumping, a lot of dizziness, nausea, lucid dreams, that kind of stuff. Very common. So as we envision our trajectory being in alignment with source creator, following our guides, downloads from the ascendant masters, Like we have a God presence and we have our like 12 to 15 really important ascendant masters that help us know the next step on our journey, right? Well, we've heard before the ending is not for everyone. Again, there was and there still are a lot of people sitting in a place of judgment, trying to decide or deciding that people of a certain political party, the end is not for them, or people of a certain country, the end is not for them. Like the good ending is not for them. And you're way off base. Number one, because you're sitting in a place of judgment. But number two, soul contracts matter way more than your judgment. And we now know, again, another aha moment, 50% of the population don't have a soul. They just don't. They're organic portal. Then you got the percentage of the population who have wagered away their soul. They've made agreements with Lucifer and Satan and Moloch and Baal and Beelzebub and whoever else. And they no longer have a soul. And so I'm talking about people on a soul contract. And that's kind of a smaller number, right? We are the minority of beings that are walking around. Sad but true. So all of the people that we encounter in our lives, even the organic portals, even the soulless beings, played a part in our soul contract that we agreed to before we arrived. So again, I use my life as an illustration. It is quite the book. When my twin flame had his accident and crossed over, I was 21. A year later, I met someone who really ended up being more of a placeholder, but had a significant role in my life because he was the first soulless person that I soul contracted to spend 8 years with, plus learning a lot of valuable lessons. Again, for him, negative polarity existence. For me, contracted to have that encounter exactly the way that it played out. Then he left my timeline for the most part, and in came soulless significant other number 2. He was in my life for 6 years, definitely negative, definitely something I didn't want to ever do again in this lifetime. I do know that I grew a lot during those encounters. Anyway, that continued. I have had like 5 significant others, not all marriages, but significant people in my life that either had negotiated away their soul or did not have one to begin with. And I agreed to that. I said, yeah, that looks like a really good life. I think I need to do that because with doing that, I will be able to, learn my lesson and check my boxes and get credit for, I don't know, the lessons that I learned and surviving and whatnot. So anyway, learning that it was part of my soul contract really helped me, I have to say, because I've never been one to try to like make sense out of craziness. It just seems crazy. And so knowing that I played my soul need played a part in all those encounters helps me balance the reason that I had to go through that in this lifetime. That one statement causes a lot of people, depending on what those encounters are and the pain and shame and blame and guilt and trauma that came from them, left them, with to deal with those shadows, those scars. So it can be a really hard thing to do, to sit back and go, I have gratitude for so and so, because them showing up is exactly what I needed. I didn't know it then, and I don't ever want to have it again, but it's what I needed. And I now know that. And I have gratitude for them for following through, you see, because my friend Hillis, who's also a soul family member, he puts it really well. He's like, envision that all these significant people are sitting around the casting table, and they're getting their script, and they're reading their roles. And the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people that are going to have those negative polarity lives and roles for you are reading that, and they know you, and they're souls that have been with you for many, many lifetimes. And they don't really want to be that person in your life. They don't really want to cause harm. They don't really want to be the one that's going to break your heart over and over and over again. They don't want to be the one that's going to manipulate you and cause you to be destitute, or whatever the case may be. But it is their soul contract that they agree to as well. And so for them to follow through on the negative polarity life, providing exactly what their soul needed and what your soul needed, is something that really does require gratitude. It should be given thanks, right? Because it's hard. So as people start to wake up to who they are, and how many lives they've had, and who the people in their life that are significant and who are the people in their life that really weren't, sometimes that realization is really, really difficult to come to terms with, that they harmed someone that they have had multiple incarnations with, and your knee-jerk question might be, why would they do that? Well, it's like knowing that you have to learn a really, really tough lesson, and you're going to entrust someone who really, really values you to teach it to you. And that's the soul that incarnates in that person, because you can trust them to see it through to the end. And that is something that really helped me understand why I had all those things happen for me with all those people, right? And again, I went through the shadow work of dealing with what they had done in their individual incarnations with me in this life. And because they followed through, I've now confirmed through source, because they followed through on their soul contract on what they were supposed to provide for me, and they did. All of them who had no soul, or had negotiated their soul away, or made, deals with the devil, whatever you want to call it, they were given another chance by source, and they have souls now, and they are course correcting in alignment with source creator. So in this one incarnation, they started out in a negative polarity, and now they've been given another chance. They've been given total forgiveness and rewarded for following through on the contract. And now the tail end of that is that now they're able to choose a higher timeline, free will choices, right? Some people in my life were given those second chances, and they just went right back to free will choice of the negative polarity, of the negative energy and the darkness, because they're used to that type of karma. They're used to that type of feeling, and that's how that they function in this incarnation. It's not for me to decide. In this life, it's not for me to decide. This was pre-planned, and each and every soul coming into a body has free will choice to either stay in alignment with the soul contract or veer from the path. And that is for them to do. That is for them to decide to do and how to do it. So when we hear the ending is not for everyone, another point that I want to make is, because the timelines are speeding up, because we are getting closer and closer to that convergence of the light beings that are going to be the population of New Earth, and then moving away from those that are negative polarity that are going to stay with old earth, they have a different timeline. So that gap is getting wider for some and smaller for others. Okay. As that is happening, people's soul contracts are ending. It is absolutely possible to have a soul contract that ends in voluntarily taking your earthly life. I know of several people that had accidents that when I dug deeper into that, once it was done, not ahead of time, because you don't really get to have that answer. I'll touch on that in a minute. I asked, was so and so finished with his soul contract? Yes. So this accident was the way that he exited this earthly life because he was done. Yes, the work was done. Okay. Some people actually contract to end their life in a suicide. That's how they decided to end their incarnation, because it was decided ahead of time. So that right there, it totally stops the shame, blame, guilt, right? Because when that kind of stuff happens, people start looking at why. What could I have done differently? How could I have stopped this? What signals did I miss? What signs did I miss? And understanding that it really was not in your power to change any of that is very, very freeing. And it also is very calming for many, many people to understand. Remember, death is an illusion. I have a video about that. We are energy bodies. We don't die. Our matter dies. Our energy transforms. So for some people, that soul contracted to end their life that way. And it looks early to us and it looks unfair to us, but it's not our contract. It's theirs. And you can't will it into existence because of what you want. That's overstepping the bounds. So speaking of overstepping the bounds, when we ask our higher self, those that have had energy clearing and they're a clear channel to source, creator, their ascendant masters, their angels, their archangels, and their guides, when they start asking these questions, sometimes they overstep, right? You shouldn't be asking about someone else's soul contract because that's their contract. That's their life details. It's not for you to know. I asked what I asked after their life, this earthly life ended. So this contract ended. And so, and even then, I'm not always given the answers. I'm given a lot of times divine timing and divine ways. And that used to frustrate the shit out of me, honestly. Because I'm Aries and I want it like now. But now I understand a lot better. I understand it is multifaceted and it really truly is not for me to know. And to that, I say, when someone in your life exits, whether it be from an illness, an accident, homicide, suicide, old age, whatever the case may be, the 3D matrix way of dealing with it is that it's this final exit and that you're never going to see them again and all this other stuff. That's not it. We transform. So our earthly body, this matter, this avatar that we're in, ceases to exist. The energy and the soul that we were is still there on the other side. And when you have clear channel communication to source creator and your guides and your ascendant masters, your angels and your archangels, you have communication with those beings if they want it. Again, they have the choice to communicate or not. Everybody gets a break after their incarnation ends. So if you're asking about your kids, you're probably not going to know. You're probably not going to be given that information. And you might say, but it's my kids. Why can't I know? Well, that's why you can't know. What parent is going to be sane in this brain that we have to function with in this dimension, knowing the soul contract details of their child? No one. No one. That's not for us to know. So when beings exit, when beings come and go, I highly, highly, highly recommend to take a pause. Take a pause. I'm not saying not feel bad. I'm not saying to not cry. I'm not saying to not mourn them. I'm not saying to not miss them. I'm saying just take a pause. Don't jump on the shame, blame, guilt track. Take a pause and realize this could be their soul contract. This could be exactly how it was supposed to be for them. And it's not up to us. It's up to us, I think, on a level to understand. And that's why I was pushed to do this, to put this message out to help people understand. As the timeline speed up and as things get closer to us, 5D from 3D, these soul contracts are going to expire. They're going to complete. You're going to have people's contracts finish, which means the earthly existence that we knew them in ends for most. So try to prevent yourself from being all, worked up in what could you have done differently, and I didn't do enough, the shame, blame, guilt game, because that's really not it. I mean, every now and again, you've got people, again, that exercise their free will choice, and that's how they choose to exit their contract. That's what they do. But by and large, most people's incarnations go according to their soul contract. Very rarely does it not. So I think for me, I won't decide for you. That's not what I do, and that's not what I'm here for. I just want to share with you some truths that I have discovered, researched, had confirmation through Source Creator and my own guides. Then maybe it'll help you deal with a recent death, or you may not have lost anyone yet, but when it starts happening, or the next time it happens, you can take a pause. And instead of reacting in a 3D matrix way, you can react in a death is an illusion. We are energy bodies. We are soul that contract a certain type of incarnation. Whenever you realize that you really only have the ability to make choices that affect you, your soul, and other people have to have the response, the reaction, the free will choice to either course correct in alignment to source or away from source. And they also have their own soul contracts. I think that clears up a lot of the murkiness of death and illness and heartache and trials. I really do. For me, that helps to clarify and make sense out of some things that my 3D matrix mind couldn't make sense out of. Right? I don't know why. I used to say all the time, I don't know why crazy people do crazy things, because I'm not crazy. And now I don't say that anymore because now I know a lot of people are doing exactly what they were contracted to do and exactly what our souls asked them to do for us in this life so that we learn the lesson. So running from it and acting like we're victims and acting like we don't know what's happening is not productive. That's not what you're supposed to do. As a soul, you don't learn a lesson by running in front of it. You need to meet it head on. You need to feel what it's supposed to be making you feel and bring up the stuff that you're supposed to address. Find your way through it spiritually with source as your guide. And that is how we evolve as souls. That is my best understanding of this. So again, this is information only, educational purposes only, for fun. Nicole's opinion. I have asked my questions of Source Creator and my guides, and I confirmed everything that I said to you today before I press record. So drop your comment in the box And I'll be happy to try and explain what I can, but some things are not explainable. That's another valuable lesson I've learned in this life, is that some of the most beautiful, miraculous things that happen for us are not explainable in earthly terms. You just have to know that it is divine timing and divine ways. And having that true faith in Source Creator is exactly what gets us through the ascension and the soul evolution that we all, with a soul, contracted to have. Thanks for joining me today on Healing Disclosures. I look forward to seeing you next time.
When I want to be grown up, I want to play hockey.
I want to be a DJ or a dancer when I grow up.
Probably be video games designer because I like playing video games.
A dad.
Some grown-ups kind of get boring jobs because maybe they'll make like more money with it than they would with jobs that were funner.
If you're doing the job that you do like, then you're not really working any day. You're not really working at all because like it's something that you actually like. It's not something like that you don't like.
I mean, of course, as a kid, I wanted to be in the majors. I wanted to play Major League Baseball or basketball. Of course,
I just remember I wanted to be a boss. It didn't matter what kind of boss. I just want to be a boss of someone.
Yeah, I mean, I dreamt about traveling the world. I mean, nobody wants to stay at home all day.
And one day I was just like, I can't do this.
I don't know how to travel with my kids. I don't see a way to go anywhere.
There are times in life I just all of a sudden realize I'm just here. I'm just existing. That I'm not progressing anymore.
I think as kids we have all these amazing dreams. Generally, as people get older, you get caught in that rut of, well, I can't do that, I don't have the money, or I don't have the time freedom. And network marketing actually has fulfilled all of those dreams for me.
I now can see that it's okay to dream and it's okay to have hope for the future, because really before I just didn't think it was possible.
For me, network marketing has introduced me to a lot of friends that I never would have met otherwise.
What I'm doing now, I'm able to give people hope.
Everything is in your control. Your happiness is in your control. Your future's in your control. How much you make is in your control.
I've traveled to almost every continent around the world. Not only can you go to see a phenomenal area, but you have a purpose. You already have friends in that area.
You have to put the work out there. What you put out there comes back.
It is 100% the best thing that you could ever do. Have a home-based business, but you get to build your dreams. You get to go live your dreams.